welcome back to Devils United. Today we'll be doing a preview for the FA Cup game as Manchester United take on Reading, and we've got Alex. Alex, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to the weekend. Hoping that we don't get beaten too heavily.
Yeah. I did see anyway that you are that you're not doing so bad, are you, at the moment in terms of the championship? Mid-table-ish, is it?
Yeah, we're 14th at the minute, which is probably better than most people would have had us down for at the start of the season. We've been under a transfer embargo for, I think it's about 3 years now. So we've only been able to sign loan players and free agents. So we've probably been doing better than most people would have expected, I reckon, so far this season.
Absolutely. We'll get into Reading itself. I'll quickly jump into the comments. Hey there, Bobby. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming in. Hey there, Patrick. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming in. Hey there, Eddie. I hope you're well. Thanks for coming in. Absolutely. It would be great to see some youth players, and thank you for the likes. Hey there, Rather. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming in. Hey there as well to John. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming in. Hey there to Reese. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming into the chat. Hey there as well to Luca. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming into the chat also. So we'll touch on as well with Reading, because I know the last game too in the FA Cup you beat Watford 2-0 too, didn't you?
Yeah, so we had Watford at home a few weeks ago. It was a fairly kind of rotated side for us, but Watford were pretty bereft of injuries. They had, I think it was a pretty much full change side, and it was quite a weak Watford side. So we pretty much like strolled through the game without too much of a problem. And if anything, 2-0 probably flattered Watford a bit. And yeah, I'm not really sure that Reading were looking for a cup run this season, but you know, a win in the third round isn't to be sniffed at.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. And looking into the game itself for the weekend, how do you feel like you're going to be setting up? Do you think it's going to be another rotated side for yourself, or do you feel like that you may come full strength squad for this game?
It's tough to know, really, with Paul Ince. He's very he changes his squad round every week, it feels like. So it's difficult to know whether we're going to be changing our squad completely, or whether we'll kind of rotate and have a half and half kind of mixture of first teamers, or whether he'll just throw the first team out and see what we can do against hopefully rotated United squad. I think we'll probably make a few changes to our normal league setup, but we'll probably still play similar kind of formation with 5 at the back and 3 central midfielders.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Hey there, Chris. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming in. Chris has got a question for you regarding have you still got the transfer embargo?
Yeah, so we've still got a transfer embargo until the end of this season. We've been under it, I think, since about 2019. The last player we signed for any money was in 2019, and it was Ovi Ajaria, who is just about to leave the club, actually. Since then, we haven't signed anybody for any money. And the business plan that we're under limits us to only spending, I think it's about £16 million a year in wages. That comes to an end at the end of this season. So we're able to spend some transfer fees after this summer. Well, during this summer.
Is there any particular reason why that has happened? Is there something to do with ownership or FFP? Or
It's FFP. So I can't remember the exact figure, but Reading lost a crazy amount of money over the past 4 or 5 years. It's something in the region of like 80 or 90 million pounds over 5 years. And the limit is, I think it's 36 million in the championship over 3 years. And we blew past the number quite significantly. So we had a 6-point deduction last season, and then a business plan set upon us that we've got to stick to this season. Otherwise, we get another 6-point penalty. So it mainly came down to the fact that we were hugely not linked, but we're very much influenced by Kia Jarabchan, the super agent, who was bringing a lot of players on quite high wages, and it didn't really work out for us. We kind of spent a lot of money and spent a lot on wages to try and get promoted, and it just didn't work. And now we're kind of paying the penalty for it by not being able to sign any players.
Does that also include loan players as well? You're not allowed any loan players?
So we're allowed to sign loan players, but we're not allowed to pay any fees for them. We're only allowed to pay wages, and we can't include any clauses or anything like that. So there's no clauses for any players if we get promoted that we can sign them. There's no options to buy. There's no, forced to buy clauses, anything like that. It's literally just like straight loan deals only.
Okay, that's understandable. I haven't heard about what was going on with Reading before, so I think it was good to get a bit more of an insight onto that. And I know you've touched on, of course, with Reading, how they may potentially set up, and how is that good for your team? Does that work well for your team playing that 5 at the back?
We've sort of and sort of not. We look very compact with 5 at the back. We don't necessarily create loads of chances. We don't give up loads of chances either. But with the players we've got in the squad, we don't really have too much of an option except to play 5 at the back. We don't have a lot of creative players within the squad to be able to play really attacking football. So we kind of have to set up fairly negatively and play with like a fairly low amount of possession in the side. So it works, but I think it works because we keep every game quite tight, and every so often when you keep games tight, you're going to win. You're going to win some of them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And as I've always said, I always say the attack, it wins you points, it gets you goals, but it's always the defense that wins you titles. It helps you get far. So I think as well, playing that tight way, the way you've described as Reading, it's difficult for a lot of teams to break you down, I can imagine.
Yeah, we don't concede a massive amount of chances from open play, or at least not very big chances. We do concede a lot of goals though. A lot of individual errors kind of still sneak into our squad. So we aren't like a really good defense or a really strong defense, but we don't necessarily concede many chances. It's just that when we do end up conceding like a really big chance when we do end up conceding one.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. I've got some more comments in. Ravi said Reading in 2-1 win he's going to go for. He's a Liverpool fan. That's probably why he's done it. And every time Ravi predicts us to lose, we always win or draw.
I won't hold out much hope then.
Especially not when Ravi's concerned anyway. Hey there, Football Power Hour. I hope you well. Thank you for coming in. Ravi has got a question regarding Reading and where do you look most dangerous in games?
100% at set pieces. We look most dangerous from set pieces. Free kicks from the edge of the box. Tom Ince, I think, has scored 3 direct free kicks this season. We've obviously got a massive team in terms of height and physical strength. Andy Carroll, if he's fit, will play most likely, I imagine. And although he's not necessarily a Premier League talent anymore, I think he's still, more than able to win balls from set pieces and win headers in the air. So it's going to be corners and corners and free kicks where we're going to be most dangerous from. We're not quick enough to counter potentially. So we're going to be reliant on getting kind of deep free kicks and hoping that we can pick up some corners.
Absolutely, I definitely see what you mean, and I seen as well. Andy Carroll, he got mentioned recently. I think it was regarding a stunning offside goal he done. I think it was a couple of months ago or something.
Yeah, he scored 2 last year in the same game, but we lost 7-0, so we don't talk about that.
Okay, I'll leave that out then regarding Andy Carroll. Okay. So question from Niall. Can you see Reading making a possible push for the playoffs, or do you feel like the season's over and next championship again?
I think the championship's so tight that it's going to be very difficult for us to be the team which is the one which comes out on top. So maybe, but it's difficult to. it's difficult to think that we'll be the ones which can do it, because we just can't put a really good run of form together, because we don't go out and dominate teams particularly. So I think it's probably unlikely that we'll be the team who can make the playoffs. I think it's much more likely we'll just kind of finish the season in mid-table. We're probably a little bit too far away from the relegation zone at the minute for that to be a problem, but not necessarily good enough to be the teams which kind of push for the playoffs.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and I feel like with the Championship, as well as the other leagues below, which probably Chris can agree with because he supports Carlisle in the league too. It's just when you get into them kind of leagues, it's so hard to get out of it, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I think I don't know if we've been here the longest in the Championship now, but I think it's 10 years this year we've been in the Championship without going up or down. So it's a struggle, because obviously the teams who come down with good players in the Premier League, lots of money coming in from parachute payments, and teams who do get relegated, they struggle when they come down because they just don't. Well, teams who come down, though, they don't struggle necessarily as much as the teams already here, because they got the money to be able to go out, spend on wages and spend on transfers without having to worry too much for a couple of years.
Yeah, because especially like ones who's come from League One to the Championship, they're the ones who seem to struggle. Because you're looking at Blackpool in particular this season, they're struggling massively. Who got promoted a couple of seasons ago? Peterborough, they weren't so well when they got promoted as well.
Yeah, every so often you get one team who does quite well, and then the vast majority of them kind of sit in the bottom of the bottom 8 of the table. So Sunderland this year have done really well when they've come up, but Wigan have struggled hugely. And although Rotherham started quite well, their manager left and they've dropped down the table as well, and they're kind of sitting in the bottom 3 as well now. So it's a big jump from League One to the Championship, and then obviously from the Championship to the Premier League, it's just as big and just as tough for teams, especially those who haven't been in the Premier League in recent years.
If, for instance, next season you've got promoted into the Premier League, how do you think you'll come about? Because we've seen ones who come like Norwich who put the zero investment in. I know you've already mentioned about the transfers going on right now, but say for example that didn't happen. What do you think Reading's strategy would be?
I mean, if we fluked away into the playoffs and won somehow, the strategy would probably be the sensible strategy from Reading would be don't spend any money and just accept we're going to get relegated because we aren't a very good side. But the likely strategy is that our owner would go a little bit mad because we've managed to get promoted at long last, and he'd end up spending a lot of money on kind of has-beens, I would imagine. So there's probably a difference between what the club would do and what the fans would necessarily want the club to do, I think.
That's fair enough. Okay, so that's gone dumb. Yeah, so one question as well from Ravi is, what's your thoughts on the squad depth? Do you feel like it's strong enough?
It's probably strong enough to stay in the Championship. It's not a brilliant squad by any means. We struggle. Central midfield is probably the area that we struggle with most. We don't have enough. I think we've only got 3 central midfielders. They're all on loan at the minute. None of them are really that good. None of them are terrible, but we don't have any creativity at the moment. So we do have squad depth, but it just isn't necessarily balanced enough to really kind of like make us challengers within the Championship.
That's fair enough, and I think the thing is, especially if you're not gonna be in the playoffs, the most important thing is to stay in the Championship, because the last thing you want to do is to get into League One, where it's gonna be a whole lot harder to get promoted again.
Yeah, and we've been really close to dropping into League One for 3 or 4 years, so it's a nice year this year just to be mid-table.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And hey there, Static. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming into the chat. Question from Luca is asking on how Andy Carroll is getting on.
He's okay. He's not terrible. He's not great, but he's not awful. I think that's probably the nicest way to put it. You can see he's lost a lot of he never really had pace, but you can see that he's not necessarily as quick as he probably needs to be or wants to be to succeed. He's still a handful for most defenders, but it does limit us in terms of how we play when he's on the field, because we do tend to just lump the ball up towards him and hope for the best. We don't necessarily like to, put the ball on the floor and play around, play it on the floor and play nice football when he's on the field. So he's not been terrible, but he's also not been fantastic either. He's kind of just doing okay, I would say.
Okay, that's fair enough. And a lot of people have mentioned Andy Carroll over the years. He's been at a lot of clubs. And where do you think he's most dangerous for in terms of Reading? Is he better in the air? Is he better with his feet?
Set pieces. If we get set piece, everything will be aimed at Andy Carroll, or Andy Carroll will go towards it. I'm not actually sure if he's scored directly from a set piece yet, like from a header or anything, but he's definitely contributed to set pieces and us scoring at least 2 or 3 this season. So yeah, it's going to be set pieces and then just kind of hopefully holding the ball up and bringing the others into the game. I think he might struggle against like better quality defenders than he does in the Championship doing that sometimes. But if we can aim for him at set pieces, that's going to be kind of his main strength, I think, on Saturday. Mm-hmm. If he plays, that is, because he's currently injured, so it's a kind of 50-50 whether he'll be starting or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, looking at Reading itself, all the games you've played this season, what would you say was your best game plus your strengths and your worst game and your weaknesses?
So our worst game was Rotherham away, probably. We lost 4-0. I think it was the second game of the season or third game of the season. We basically just fell apart in the first half, and we were 4-0 down at half time away from home. We looked really, really unorganised at the back. But the main kind of issue with that game was the keeper just kind of had an absolute nightmare. We'd been warned over summer after we signed him that we would struggle with him making mistakes. And he just made 2 or 3, which would literally directly impact him towards all the goals. So that was probably our worst performance of the season, I would say, so far. But then we followed it up with a win against Blackburn, who'd won every game up to that point. And we won 3-0 at home, literally the game after. And we looked incredible that day. So it's really like we're very inconsistent. We don't necessarily, even one bad result doesn't really affect them to the point where they go and lose 4 or 5 in a row. But also one good result doesn't mean that we're suddenly going to start playing really well the next game after as well. So it's a very inconsistent squad. We can put in a really good performance one week and then turn out a bad performance the next.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough. As opposed being inconsistent, is, how can I say, quite frustrating in a kind of way as well.
Yeah, you never know what they're going to turn up with. We can, you travel up and down the country and you can watch them play, I don't know, one week in Wigan and they play quite well and don't look like they're going to get beaten. And then you go another week to Swansea and they just collapse and lose 3-0 or 3-2 and look like they've got no chance of winning at all. So, yeah, it's a difficult one to follow them.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable. Question from Niall. Can you see Reading signing Jeff Hendricks full time from his loan at Newcastle? I know you've already touched on the transfer situation, but afterwards?
I doubt it. Although Hendrick has been like a player who's played a lot of games this season for us, I don't think he'll sign for us full time in the summer. It's a big drop in wages if he comes down from the Premier League to Reading, and he's not necessarily been that good either. He's not been terrible, but games kind of pass him by a lot of the time. So it's a difficult one to see him signing full time because he doesn't really add enough to warrant him being signed. So I'd be surprised if we were going to sign him full time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair enough. And he's also asked on what's your thoughts on Paul Ince as a manager, ex-Man United player. We don't like talking about him being an ex-Man United player, Niall.
I mean, when he came in, I wasn't necessarily a fan. It's been a long time since he's been a manager. He's done well with what he's got available. He doesn't have any transfers available to him. The squad isn't necessarily that good. So he has done quite well, but he's really limited in terms of tactic. It's very much kind of like a set up to defend and then hope for the best. We don't have like we don't have any plan to go forwards and score goals from open play necessarily. So although he's doing a good job with what he's got, it's not a case that I think he's got like a long-term future managing like at the top level or anything. I think he's probably limited to where he's at, and he'd probably make a good manager for a team which is potentially going to go down in the lower leagues. But I'm not sure he's cut out to be a long-term Championship or Premier League manager particularly.
Okay. If you could think of any other team that he would suit, what team would you say he'd suit then?
I mean, if he hadn't been out of management for 10 years, then Paul Ince would... the situation that Everton find themselves in, it would make sense. He shouldn't go to Everton. Everton shouldn't want him, but it's that kind of situation where they can't really sign anybody and they need someone who can come in and basically work with what they've got. So that kind of situation, but lower down the divisions.
Reece said Paul Ince would be perfect for Motherwell. I don't know if he's trying to laugh at Motherwell by saying that, but I'm not too sure. The next one now from Reece is, how do Reading play under Ince? Your set style and preferred system, and would you prefer a different manager?
So we play kind of a very low block system, 5 at the back. So we'll either play 5-3-2 or 5-4-1, depending on whether we've got the ball or not, and who's started up front. We'll play with 2 wing backs. One will be an actual left back, and one will be kind of a right winger who's playing a right wing back. It's very kind of defensive. We won't necessarily go forwards that much. When we do, it will be either long ball or counter attack only. Really, we won't keep the ball and try and play football too much because we just don't really have the talent in the squad to be able to do it. Would I prefer a different manager? It's a difficult one. This season, probably not, because he's doing what we've wanted to see. We're staying in the division, which is kind of what Reading's aim was for this year. So probably not this year, but in summer, it would make sense, I think, for Reading to probably try and look for someone who can come in and make changes a bit more kind of long term than one season under Paul Ince.
That's understandable. I literally was about to ask something, but then my mind just went blank. Oh yeah, that was it. I know, like, of course, with you being in the Championship, you've probably watched QPR, and one of our youth players, Ethan Led, is at QPR. Do you think, based off how Paul Ince plays, he will be a good shout for you for your team?
I honestly don't know if he's played against us this season or not. I couldn't tell you. I know he's played quite a number of games for QPR this year. I think he plays right back, if I'm right.
Yeah, I don't know. He plays he's more of a wing back for me than he is a right back, but I don't know what kind of system QPR truly plays.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, we've been playing a right wing or a right wing back this year. It is. I mean, I don't know what Ethan Led's play style is like, but we do probably need a kind of a right wing back potentially this summer. So possibly. I think he's relatively young, Ethan Led. I want to say he's like 20.
He's about 20.
And he's from near Reading anyway. So it would kind of make sense.
Yeah. I definitely. I think for me, he's one of them kind of things where he's got plenty of game time at QPR, but I just think right now he isn't up to where he should be for Manchester United, and I done like player profiles with the players who went out on loan in the summer. I know like Ethan Led didn't have a good spell at Bournemouth, and I looked at different options of what teams could really suit him. And with you mentioning how Reading play, the way Ethan Led has played, it sounds like a better fit for him than what he would have been at Bournemouth.
I mean, it sounds like it would make sense. I don't know how well it will go down with Paul Ince trying to get players from Man United, but yeah, potentially if they can get over that kind of like potential speed hump.
Okay. Ravi's asked, what's your thoughts on Reading's in-game management style?
We are quite random, I would say, is probably the best way to put it. Paul Ince's substitutions sometimes are really good and sometimes are really bad. And there's no real telling what we're going to do when it comes to substitutions. Some weeks we'll take off a striker and put on a defender. Other weeks we'll take off a defender and put on a midfielder. Some weeks we'll put on a defender and play them in central midfield. There's really like not a lot of sense to what we're doing in terms of changes in the middle of the match. We don't tend to switch up tactics depending on how the game is going. We very much kind of stuck in our ways to how the game is going. So it's fairly limited, I would say, our in-game management.
That's fair enough. And I know you've already touched on about the Reading goalkeeper, but how good is he from Ravi? Is he better his distribution, his shot stopping?
He doesn't have any major strengths, which sounds really bad, but he's not bad in anything, but he's also not really that good in anything either. I think if you were to ask a QPR or a Middlesbrough fan, he does make some mistakes. I don't really think he's made a whole ton of mistakes at Reading. He's had a couple of games where it's like he's made errors which have led to goals. He's probably a good enough Championship goalkeeper, but that's like the very bottom of the Championship, and that's probably where his limit is, I think.
Would you say that's probably an area you're going to look at probably strengthening in the summer, perhaps?
I think we don't really have a choice. I think we've got two other goalkeepers on the books at the moment, and or three other goalkeepers on the books. One is a 33-year-old from League Two who's the backup keeper on the bench, and then we've got two youth players. One who's fairly highly rated, who's played for England youth internationals, and then we've got an Icelandic goalkeeper who's played a few games in League One on loan, but not necessarily he's not pulled up any trees. He's been okay. So we're probably going to have to sign a starter in summer. Don't know who or what level, but we're probably looking for a keeper in summer.
Would you probably look at most likely another one from the Championship, or maybe have a look at one from the Scottish League, for instance?
I don't think it really matter where we sign from. I think whoever it will be a free transfer in goal, and we'll try and sign a goalkeeper who can come in and be in goal for 2-3 seasons for us, and not a player on loan. So I think it will probably be a more experienced goalkeeper instead of a younger player. I don't really think it any kind of real preference as to where we sign them from, just as long as there's a bit of experience there between the sticks.
And keeping on to transfers, Niall has asked what thoughts on Shane Long returning to Reading. Can he still do it in the Championship? I know he was good for Southampton, to name a few of the clubs he's played with.
Yeah, he's been okay. It was a big deal when he signed because it was kind of a player who came back. He was really good for us 10 years ago, and it was a really big deal when he signed. He hasn't been fantastic, I think it's fair to say. No one was expecting him to come in and score 20 goals. He's struggled to find the net really on any kind of consistent basis. He does look good when he comes on, but but he's kind of got the same issues he's had throughout his career, where he can't finish he just can't finish enough to really make himself an undroppable player.
Is that based off the creativity in the team, or just more that he's just missing clear chances?
It's a bit of both. So he does get some clear chances. I mean, he had a great chance a few weeks ago, hit straight at the keeper. I can remember a couple of chances earlier in the season when he's gone one-on-one and he's put it wide. But also, he doesn't necessarily get 2 or 3 good chances every game. He might get one every 3 or 4 when he's playing, but that's it. So it's kind of a bit of both, really. We don't have a massive amount of chances for him to put away, but also even the ones he is getting, he's not putting them away either.
Okay, yeah. John has asked, who is your favourite player and why?
I think my favourite player is for Reading is Tom Ince. Guy's just got like an engine. He just runs and runs and runs. He sets standards. He demands the most for everybody on the field. And not only that, he does it with some quality himself as well. You know, he's got a decent strike on him from the edge of the area. He can take a free kick. Although we've only had him for a year now, I think he's probably going to win our player of the season. And we're only halfway through. He's going to walk our player of the season with absolutely no questions.
Would you say he's probably the biggest threat coming into this game in the weekend?
Yeah, as long as he's starting, I think he'll be our biggest threat, and probably our best player as well. If he gets on the ball and he can run at people, he is a threat. And he from set pieces, he does have a good corner on him. He can take a good free kick. So if he has a good game, generally we tend to play quite well. If he doesn't have a great game, we don't play quite as well as a team. He's going to be one of our biggest threats this weekend, certainly if he plays.
Ravi said about Tom Ince that he was promising at Liverpool, just couldn't make it. Keeping on to Ravi, he has also asked who is your best centre-back partnership currently.
So we play 3 centre-backs. Generally we've been playing Tom Holmes as the central centre-back, and then Andy Yeardom, who's a right-back, but he's been playing right centre-back this season. And then left centre-back has been a kind of a bit of a mix and match. We played a few different players there. Naby Sarr's played there. We've had Sam Hutchinson play there. We've had Tom Holmes has played there. Scott Dan has been in the central defence. We don't really have a set 3. I think it's probably going to be Tom McIntyre who plays there this weekend at left centre-back alongside Tom Holmes at centre-back and then Andy Yeardom at right centre-back. But we don't have like a really settled back 3. It's just those 2 of Tom Holmes and Andy Yeardom.
Okay, and I suppose as well, having that chop change of the left centre back doesn't necessarily help the team out either, really.
Yeah, it's difficult for them to get any kind of rhythm and partnership between them, and the fact that we're quite weak at left back means that whoever's playing at left centre back, you really need them to be quite strong. And ultimately, because we've struggled at left centre back, we look weaker all the time down the left because we just can't. There's no connection between whoever's playing left centre back and the left back as well.
Question from me from Ravi. How do you think you will set up against Reading, and which areas do you think you may be able to hurt them in? I think we'll probably set up with the usual 4-2-3-1. I think we'll have a couple of changes. We'd probably have maybe Lindelof playing or Maguire instead. Though maybe that might be a bit of a positive for Alex there about Maguire. I think that Scott McTominay or Fred will be playing. Maybe Kobe Mano might have another appearance, and I think Garnacho will be starting as well, alongside Anthony Elanga. I don't think for me that we should be playing Rashford. We should be playing Anthony either. I think for me, I'm not been an overall big fan of Anthony this season. Not just taking away the price tag, I just don't think he's really been good enough. He's got too many flaws that I'm not a fan of. So I think for me, that would be probably what we would set up as. And I think we'd probably most likely try to exploit through our wide areas, through the wings of Garnacho, trying to feed Garnacho. And if we're playing Martial or Weghorst up front, I think that will be where we'll be probably making the most attacks. But so back at you for you, Alex. What areas do you think Reading can hurt Manchester United?
It will be mainly from if we play Carroll up front. It will be through set pieces. If Meite plays up front, it will be kind of long balls up to Yaki Meite, who will be playing up front on his own, and then kind of him flicking the ball on and then trying to twist around and turn the defence. So I think it'll be one of those two, depending on who starts up front out of those two, will depend on kind of where we're most likely to be able to take advantage of Man United at the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you probably try and exploit us through the middle, or would you probably try for the try from the fullbacks?
It will likely be through the middle. I think if we manage to do anything from open play, the wing backs don't necessarily get forwards that much, even though they play wing backs and not like right and left back. They're not that attacking, although we'd like them to be. I think it's more likely that we're going to be kind of pinging balls through the middle rather than down the wings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's understandable, and I think depending on what defence that we do have up, I think probably the middle will be the best option. If, for instance, we play like Maguire and Lindelof, or we play, for instance, like Lindelof and Martinez, just as we're playing tonight, I still think that there is that opportunity where you are able to exploit just because of the ball watching.
Yeah, I mean, if we're up against Martinez and Lindelof, or you know, Maguire and Lindelof or Maguire, I don't think that we have no chance with, you know, our strikers playing up against them. But it does require the Man United defenders certainly to have an off day for us to create those big chances if we're going to get anything out of it.
Question from Niall: who would you say Reading's main rivals are in local area and Big Derby?
I mean, most Reading fans would tell you our local rivals would be Oxford or Swindon, but we haven't played either of them in a competitive game for 15 years at least. And they very much kind of like live in our shadow. They're League One and League Two, and we haven't played them. I think it's like early 2000s. We might have played them last competitively. So we don't really have a particularly big derby currently, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's understandable, and that's the thing is when you don't have them rivalries, you kind of miss it in a way, don't you? Because I remember speaking to Dan, who's a Burnley fan, when he was in the Premier League, he missed playing against Blackburn because there wasn't that real rivalry there.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a rivalry, don't get me wrong, but it's at the minute we just don't have one. And unless we swap leagues or Oxford get promoted, it's just not going to happen for us anytime soon. Every other team near us around is, you know, they've all got their own rivalries already, and we're not relevant to them. So.
Question for myself: Do you think United will look at winning the game in the first half and bring the big guns in the middle of the second half? I think for me, what will probably happen is it will probably go 1-0 up by half time, maybe 2, and then we'll probably try and see the game out. That's what Man United tends to do: try and score 1 or 2 goals in the first half and then defend for them lives in the second half. And I don't personally think that's how we should play. Especially, you've got to take a real good defense to defend for your life. And there's not many teams who's able to defend for their lives. They haven't got a good enough defense. If that's the Premier League, the Championship, League One, League Two, or even anywhere in the world, perhaps there's not many good defenses who's able to hold out that. And I don't know whether it's because of Ten Hag's tactics or it's just the fact that the players just lose it in that second half. But I think that's what Manchester United will probably end up doing, to be honest. Ravi has also asked for you, Alice, do you think your next 3 league games are winnable?
Our next 3 league games? I wouldn't know which our next 3 league games are. I think we've got Watford at home, Sunderland away, Rotherham at home. I mean, if we got 4 points from that, I'd be quite happy. Watford are quite high up in the table, but they're inconsistent. Rotherham at home is one which Reading will just have to win, really, I think. Sunderland away is going to be very difficult. They're, a decent team this season. They've played very well, and they beat us quite comfortably earlier on in the season, 3-0 on TV. So if we got 3 or 4 points, that's probably the best that we can hope for, I think.
And we'll finish off with this final question from Ravi. Which players in your team would you say are quick? If I was going to look at it, I'd probably say, for instance, Lisandro's quick, Varane, Rashford, Antony, Garnacho are probably the quick ones. What would you say is quick in your team, Alex?
I think our quickest player is probably Tom Ince. Definitely got the kind of like pace on him. Other than Ince, we haven't got a team which is full of quick players, unfortunately. Shane Long is fast, but he's not going to be on the field for long enough, I think, for it to matter. So yeah, Tom Ince. Mate's got a little bit of pace about him, but again, it's not huge. Unfortunately, we're just not a particularly quick team this year.
Before we wrap up, we'll do the score prediction. I've got for 2-0 for Man United. I don't think it's going to be a battering fest, if you want me to be honest. And I don't think that Manchester United shouldn't really underestimate Reading either. And I've always said, the thing is with the FA Cup, anyone could beat anyone. You've seen it all over the years. That you've seen how far Nottingham Forest got last season in the FA Cup. You've seen that upset there with Sheffield Wednesday, literally just this year with Newcastle. And I think for me, there has been some games in the past with Reading, and I know a lot of our fans are quite excited for it. So I don't think it's going to be as easy as probably a lot of people are thinking. I know I've seen 4-5-0s, but I'm just going to go with a 2-0. What are you going to go for, Alex?
If we don't lose by more than 2, I think most people will probably go home fairly happy with that. Reading, I don't really think any Reading fan is going into it with a realistic expectation that we're going to do any better than, losing by 2. Or if we can keep it to that, I think most fans would be quite happy. I think I'll probably go 3-0 to Man United. I'd be surprised if we can pull anything off. Although we can play well, we struggle if we go 1-0 down, we sometimes see our heads drop. And I think if Man United do get an early goal, the heads could drop quite easily if we don't come back into the game too quickly after that, and we could end up just on the wrong side of like a 3 or 4. But yeah, I'll go with 3-0, and we'll kind of take the payday and move on, I think.
Reese has gone for a 2-1 for United. Hopefully get a clean sheet, but we're not doing so well with defence at the moment, let's just say. But we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on. It's been great to speak to you, get some more insight as well on Reading. Would you like to shout out your socials?
We're at Elm Park Royals on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. We'll have a Man United preview up some point tomorrow as a podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and then we'll be doing a review after the game as well. If anybody wants to check out our feedback and well, I can't remember the right word I'm going for there, but if anybody wants to listen to us talk about Reading, then come and check us out.
I've put your links in the description below for your socials, so if you haven't already, go and give Alex a follow, give him a subscribe as well. Andrew's in the chat. I hope you're well there, Andrew, Swansea fan. And now it's gone for 3-0. I think Andrew's getting mixed up with the women's football because it was Man United women who played Reading over the weekend, and then with the Reading men, I played against the Man United men. Just to ask, did you watch at all the Man United women versus Reading women?
No, I caught the highlights, and it was quite a close game from what I could see, and Man United won it quite late on.
Yeah, I watched the highlights myself. We was very lucky to get a win. I must be honest. I watched the highlights when I was in Barcelona, and I was a bit annoyed. I must be honest. It took that long, but I know Reading women are very hard to break down, especially when they're at home. So 1-0 is better than a draw. It's better than a loss. So that's how I look at it anyway. But thank you again, Alex, for coming on. And take care, everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow for another podcast. And the podcast is sacking managers the new norm in football? Got some great guests lined up. Get your views into the chat tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Take care. Bye-bye.